We have been discussing today's sponsor. Once again, we'd like to thank, I have it somewhere over here. Jeff and Lori Goldchin are sponsoring for the miracles, the revealed miracles that God has bestowed upon many, and that God should continue sending miracles for all that are in need of health, and miracles for Eretz Yisrael as well. Thank you very much. We were discussing the chosen people. We were discussing it, that the difficulty that many have within even the Jewish world going back 100 years. And we spoke about the Pittsburgh platform that said we need to start moving away from the particulars of the Jewish people and just become one world religion. And we have different backgrounds, but other than that, we're all just one. And it doesn't work that way. The fact is, in order for there to be a Jewish people, there needs to be an identity of a Jewish people. And the identity is how we live our lives. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. All right, now I want to quote to you from President John Adams, the second president of the United States. And he said, "The Jews have done more to civilize man than any other nation. They are the most glorious nation that ever inhabited the earth. The Romans were but a babel in comparison to the Jews. They have given religion to 3/4 of the globe and have influenced the affairs of mankind more happily than any other people." So outside of the Jewish people, the world has recognized that there is something about the Jewish people, that there's something unique about the Jewish people, that there's a contribution that the Jewish people have made to mankind as a whole. Mark Twain, you've heard this many a times. If the statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his commercial importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstruse learning are always way out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in this world, in all the ages, and he has done it with his hands tied behind him. He could be vain of himself and be excused for it. The Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the Persians rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Romans followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now or have vanished. The Jew saw them all, and is now what he has always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? And that's the way Mark Twain ends his article, with a question. Mark Twain writes this before the last century, before Holocaust, before the state of Israel. Imagine the question now, what is the secret of his immortality? How can the people go through a Holocaust, go through what the Jewish people have experienced, and come out stronger than ever? The very fact is the Jewish people today are in a stronger position than they have been for thousands of years, post-Holocaust. What is the secret of his immortality? How is it that we continue to survive? So I'd like to first start our discussion taking a quick view through some of the verses of the Bible that focus on the Jewish people as a chosen people. When I use the term chosen people, chosen also means that there was a selection that took place. That is very clear that God selects, makes a determination of saying this family, this selection. I read to you first the verse that God says to Abraham early on. All the families of the earth shall be blessed through you. Clearly God is speaking to Abraham. God is selecting Abraham. God is saying to Abraham, I'm going to start a new nation from you. But he's clarifying that the purpose of this nation is going to be to bring blessings to all the families on the face of the earth. There's going to be a new world order. After 2,000 years of failure, man and his descendants will have to now face something new. What's new? For the first 2,000 years, there was just the relationship God and every human being. Most human beings chose to ignore God and live a life the way they deemed. Utilized their free choice, and they acted quite immorally and quite evil. What's going to change now is that a human being will take upon themselves this responsibility of seeing to it that the world tries to stay on a path of righteousness. That individual is Abraham. That mission is given to Abraham. To change the world. Don't allow the world just to continue going on its evil path. Speak up. Keep goodness alive. Any student of the Bible, if you read through the book of Genesis and you read through the stories of Abraham and Sarah, of Isaac and Rebekah, of Jacob, of Leah, and of Rachel, you clearly see that God is selecting. God is picking a family. Now let's do this jumping. This is said to Abraham. It's Genesis chapter 22. For those that are taking notes, you could write it down. For those listening out there, you can jot down and look through a Bible. Genesis chapter 22, it's verse 17 and 18 of that chapter. God says to Abraham that I surely bless you and greatly increase your offspring like the stars of the heavens and like the sand on the seashore. And your offspring shall inherit the gate of its enemy. And all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your offspring, because you have listened to my voice. I'll jump to a verse that was in last week's portion. Those of you that were in shul last week, I dwelled on it. It's a simple verse, but it's so powerful. I'll set the story for you. There are 3 angels. They came to visit Abraham. They came to visit Abraham after he had a circumcision. He has a circumcision when he's 99 years old. He's not in the best of feeling that day. He's in some pain, and the angels come to visit with him. Now, when God sends angels, they have missions. And the missions, one of the angels' mission was to bring about healing for Abraham. The other one was to inform Sarah, his wife, that she was going to be blessed with a miracle child named Isaac. And the third messenger was being sent to go on a mission to destroy the cities of Sodom, because they were wicked cities, and God determined that it's time that this cannot go on, and those cities are going to be destroyed. And then when visited the Dead Sea, that was the area of where Sodom used to be. The angels came to Abraham, they speak to Abraham. First, Abraham thinks they're just Arabs passing in the way. He invites them in to eat and to drink. And then they kind of inform him who they are, that they're messengers from God, and they're here to inform Sarah that she's going to have a child. And then the verse tells us the angels now carry on their way. They say their farewell. Abraham escorts them out, and they're on their journey. Now we know where they're heading, right? They're heading for Sodom. That's their next mission. That's their next stop. The Torah, the Bible, gives you literally these parentheses. You don't see the parentheses, but its style of speech suddenly changes from the narration of the story, and it goes to this. And God said, shall I hide from Abraham that which I'm about to do? God is speaking to himself in the Bible, and he's having this internal debate with himself. I know what I'm about to do because I'm sending the angel to destroy Sodom. I've just finished having a nice time with Abraham. Should I hide from Abraham that which I'm about to do? And I question and I say, and why not? You've hidden everything from man up until now, and you're going to continue hiding things from man. You've never consulted with me about anything. Has God consulted with any of you here in this room? Shall I hide from Abraham that which I'm about to do? You know, the language of the Seder night, manishtana, what's different today? So God responds to this question. And he says, and Abraham is going to be such a treasured nation, such a great people. I have a bond with him. I have a relationship with him, unlike anyone else. Think about this language. An infinite God says he has a bond with a finite creation, with a human being. And then he explains it. Why? What makes Abraham so special? What makes him so unique? Lamana sheyitzave ezbanav, because he's going to instruct his children and his children's children to follow in the path of godliness, to be charitable, to be kind, to see to it that there is justice in the world, and to follow the path of God. That's unique, because for 2,000 years we haven't had that. The first 2,000 years we don't have that. And therefore with Abraham I'm different. And therefore I'm going to inform him of what I'm about to do. And he tells Abraham what he's about to do. It's like, imagine this, it's a parable. It's not necessarily a good one, but at the same time it'll get the message across. Imagine someone's a bachelor for 2,000 years, and then he gets married. Something changes when you get married. Because for 2,000 years you do everything by yourself. You're a bachelor. You don't have to discuss what we're doing today. You don't have to discuss what's for dinner. You do what you want to do because you're a bachelor. But the moment you get married, there's now someone else to be concerned about. What's their feelings? How do they feel about it? This internal conversation that God is having is this transition of God being the bachelor, of God doing everything by himself, to now there being a someone else that he wants to communicate this decision that he's made. Now what's the drawback of that? You may want to have steak and fries for dinner, but now you're in a marriage, so you got to discuss it, and you say it to your wife, and what does she say? We're not having steak and fries. We're having salmon tonight, right? That's healthy, you see, there you go. What happens? God shares with Abraham that which he's about to do, and what does Abraham do? What? God? You're going to do that? Should a God of justice behave in such a manner? He doesn't like it, and he complains about it. And the negotiations begin. Abraham says, I'll make a deal with you, God. If there are 50 righteous people that live there, will you change your mind and not destroy them? God says, you got yourself a deal. He thinks it's going to end there, but not Abraham. What about 45? Can we settle on 45? God says we got a deal at 45. He goes to 40. He goes to 30. He goes to 20. He finalizes the deal at 10. If there are 10 righteous people, will you spare the destruction? And God says you got yourself a deal. Abraham goes back home. God goes to wherever his heavenly abode is. The conversation is over. The angels arrive at Sodom. The plan continues. Why? Because there are no 10 righteous people there. They'll go and they'll rescue Abraham's nephew and his 2 daughters, rescue them before the cities are destroyed. Abraham wakes up in the morning and he sees the smoke and he understands that the destruction took place. He's still one with God. He understands the decision was made, but the relationship remains. It's the first time we have this type of discussion in the Torah where God is looking at a human being and saying, we're partners. We have work to do together. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't make us infinite. That doesn't make us as a human being God. God is still God, and we're still a human being. But God allows himself to have a relationship with a human being. And he explains to us why. Because he's going to see to it that his children and his grandchildren will follow in his ways. I want you to think about that verse and just fast forward the clock till today. Abraham's children are still coming together on a Wednesday afternoon to study God's Torah. That's what God saw back then. This is a relationship that's going to continue and continue and continue. That's why God selects this family. Abraham has 2 sons. He has a son named Ishmael with a wife named Hagar. He then has a son named Isaac with a wife named Sarah. He has 2 sons. It's very clear in the Torah, again, that a selection will take place, that God will pick one of these 2 sons that will continue to have the mantle of this chosen people. He blesses Ishmael. He says Ishmael is also going to be a great, powerful nation. Ishmael will also be there for thousands of years. but they will not bear this responsibility that I am placing on the descendants of Abraham. That's going to carry on through the son of Isaac. Now, if there was a Muslim cleric in the room, he would disagree with me. He would say, no, you guys switched the name. Everything that you're saying is true, but it's true about Ishmael. But the Torah itself tells us it was Isaac. Obviously, they have a different read on it. I read to you now from the text of the Torah, Genesis again, if you want to take notes, chapter 26, verses 3 through 5. It's now God communicating to Isaac. And he says to Isaac, sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your offspring will I give all these lands. He's now promising Isaac that the land that you're living in, which was the land of Canaan, the land of Israel, that's going to you. That's going to be an inheritance to you and your descendants. And establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I'm now establishing the covenant. The deal I made with Abraham is now being passed to you. I will increase your offspring like the stars of the heavens, and will give your offspring all these lands. And all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your offspring, because Abraham obeyed my voice and observed my safeguards, my commandments, my decrees, and my Torah. For the first time, that word is introduced to us. And my Torah. It's not just going to be about Abraham was a kind man and he acted with kindness. It's not just that this nation is going to be about being kind. That's a big part of it. But there's going to be a Torah. There's going to be a commandments that's going to be specifically and uniquely given to these descendants of Abraham that I have selected. And he's telling Isaac, it's going to be through you. I point out when we look at these verses, and I'll soon read to you from the text to Jacob, every time that God is talking about selection, when I mean selection, he's picking one over the other. This is the ones that will carry this responsibility. This is the family that will carry this mission. He will always throw in the line, and all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your offspring. Every time, it is always mentioned. Why? Don't become arrogant by the fact that you burden this mission. It's a responsibility, it's a partnership, but it's a partnership to serve man. It's a partnership to make the world better for all of humanity. I'm not selecting one people and say, I don't care about the others. It's because I care about the others that I need to have a chosen people. Because without that, I've experimented for 2,000 years. It doesn't work. We're going to eventually, in a few weeks, get to the subject of kosher. It's the next verse. It's verse number 3 in chapter 14. We're in verse number 2. So after Thanksgiving, we'll get to it. We're going to get to kosher. We're going to have nice discussions about kosher. Now, many have heard, perhaps, that kosher has something to do with healthy. Equate the word kosher with healthy. I tell you now that kosher has absolutely nothing to do with health. I am your perfect example of that. Pringles has been a weakness of mine for many, many years. Trust me, it's not healthy. But many of them are kosher. Not the ones with the cheese in it necessarily, but the plain ones are kosher. Unhealthy, but kosher. Up until 18 months ago, I was Mountain Dew's #1 sponsor out there. I drank 5 cans a day. I've been off it for 18 months. I've been sober for 18 months and counting. But it's not healthy. You know that you cannot find a can of Mountain Dew in Israel? Do you know that? Does anyone know why? I looked into it because when I'm in Israel, I was looking for my Mountain Dew. I traveled everywhere throughout the entire state. No Mountain Dew anywhere. And I found out it's illegal to import Mountain Dew in Israel. Do you know why? They deem it unhealthy. I think about this. You got everyone walking around with Uzi machine guns on the streets of Israel. That's okay, but Mountain Dew, it has too much sugar per ounce. The health department of Israel has banned Mountain Dew in Israel because of too much sugar. And thus, when this career is over for me, I'm going to meet with the Mountain Dew people. We're going to drop the level of sugar just a little bit, import into Israel, and we're going to call it Har Tal. Anyone get Har Tal? That's Mountain Dew in Hebrew, and I will be a very wealthy man one day. But anyway, where were we? We were kosher and health. One has nothing to do with the other. And the proof that I say to it is because if it has something to do with health, think of what God's saying then. To all you Gentiles, eat unhealthy food all day long. But for Jews, you have to be healthy. Think about what that statement would mean. Kosher has nothing to do with health. Kosher has to do with a certain diet that God wants the Jewish people to keep, which we'll discuss in a few weeks. But the Torah is not saying God doesn't care about other people that are Gentiles. It's God saying, I care about them and they're going off the path and therefore I need help. And help will come from a human being, and help will come from a family, and help will come from a nation that is committed to remaining a particular way, because that will help keep the world on track to being a moral nation. Let's move on to Jacob. I'm jumping to Genesis chapter 28, verses 14 and 15. This is now God speaking to Jacob. When is he speaking to Jacob? Anyone remember a biblical story? We've studied it together. For those that were not here, perhaps you remember that Jacob, as a son, is a twin brother of someone named Esau. And then when his father Isaac is getting old, he wants to give blessings. And he wants to give blessings to his firstborn, which was Esau. Although they're twins, Esau came out first, and therefore Esau is the firstborn. And he wants to give blessings to Esau. And Rebekah, the mother, hears this, and she tells Jacob quickly, disguise yourself as Esau and go in and get the blessings. There's so many questions on this story. We've discussed it here for many, many hours. That's not what today is about. The point is, Jacob will do it. Jacob will get the blessings. Esau now wants to kill him for it. And Jacob is going to have to run away. Unlike Isaac, who lived every moment of his life in the land of Israel, Jacob is a wanderer. He first starts off in the land of Israel. He's now running away from Israel. He's running from his brother. He will live outside the land of Israel for many years, and only later will he make his return. It's at that moment that he goes and he rests up on a spot that we know later to be the Temple Mount. And there he will have a dream. Anyone who remember the story of Jacob's ladder, or heard of the story of Jacob's ladder? That's the dream that Jacob will have. It is in that conversation God will reveal himself to Jacob. And this is part of what God will say to him. Your offspring shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall spread out powerfully westward, eastward, northward, and southward. In Hebrew, you may be familiar with these words. Ufaratzta, Yama, Vakedma, Vitzafona, Venegba. Guess what comes next? And all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and by your offspring. So just in case, Jacob, you think that you may have sinned by getting the blessing, just in case you think that you may have done something wrong, I'm telling you, this is how the transition is going to take place. It will go from Abraham to Isaac, and from Isaac to Jacob. It's not going through Ishmael, and it's not going through Esau. Jacob will eventually go, he'll start a family. He will have the 12 tribes. The 12 tribes will eventually make up the 12 tribes of Israel. And they will eventually inherit the land of Israel. But we have a whole book of Exodus of detour, right? We end up in the land of Egypt because of the story of Joseph. And there in the land of Egypt we become enslaved. And we're enslaved for 210 years in Egypt. And then there'll be a story of Moses. And then Moses will go to Pharaoh to take the Jewish people out. And then after they take the Jewish people out, there's the splitting of the sea. And then after there's the splitting of the sea, there's the journey to Mount Sinai, to the revelation at Sinai, to the giving of the 10 Commandments at Sinai. So I'm jumping now to Exodus, chapter 19. It's verses 3 through 6. Moses ascends to God. God called to him from the mountain, saying, so shall you say to the house of Jacob, and relate to the children of Israel. You have seen what I did to Egypt, and that I have borne you on the wings of eagles, and brought you to me. And now if you hearken well to me and observe my covenant, you shall be to me the most beloved treasure of all peoples, for mine is the entire world. You shall be to me a kingdom of ministers and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel. God's not entering into this special relationship because he's lonely. It's not because he needs companionship. It's not because he's looking for a date. God has a goal. He has a purpose. It's the same goal he had when he first created the world in the very, very beginning. To make this physical world a more godly place, a more refined place. And for that he needs priests. People that will be the ones to minister to the rest of the world. And that's the job, the responsibility given to the Jewish people. If you go through the entire book of Exodus, and you go through the book of Leviticus, and you go through the book of Numbers, you'll see the Torah will outline many commandments, many mitzvot that God is giving specifically to the Jewish people. Shabbat and kosher and mikvah. There's a whole section of civil laws called the portion of mishpatim. There are many ritual laws. There's testimonial laws. The Torah is the life manual of how does a chosen people act chosen. What do you want me to do? What is this mission? It's the do's and the don'ts. Follow it. Follow my ways, God says, and it's going to be good for you and good for the world. And God will have nachas from us. So whereas it began with Abraham, with a covenant with the patriarchs, that was the spirit of Judaism. The covenant at Sinai, that's the laws of Judaism. Spirit is Genesis, the spirit of Judaism, the personality of Judaism, the characteristics of Judaism, the laws of Judaism begin at Sinai. We go from being a family to being a nation. The faith of Judaism, the details of Judaism, that begins for us at Sinai. So God presents it to us. Do you want this challenge? He talks to the family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to our ancestors who were enslaved in Egypt. And he asks them, do you want it? Do you want the task? You have a little bit of the taste of what the world is like. You've experienced what this world can be. Are you interested? Yes. And we answered, Na'aseh v'nishma. 2 words. We will do and we will listen. We're prepared to follow whatever it is you set out for us. V'nishma, and we will study it. And we've been studying it ever since. Let me put it to you this way. There are 2 kinds of relationships of love that we have. There's parents' love for their child. That's unconditional. It's a natural love. It's just there. You don't have to explain it to anyone. You don't have to justify it to anyone. You love your child. Why? Because it's my child. Because it's me. You send your kid off to kindergarten, right? They come back with some art, right? They patchked with some paint and some crayons. It looks like another word we used to use, mishkabibble, right? The child coming home from school with that piece of art is most excited about one thing: showing it to mommy. That's all they want to do. The second they walk through that room, it's mommy, mommy, look what I made. Mommy sees it and doesn't see the mess that me and you see. Mommy takes it and hangs it up. Why? Is it a beautiful piece of art? No. But it's more precious to her than any of the bought art that's around the house. Because my little tatala made this. That's a relationship, and it's real, and we all, that's what we experience with our children. And the same with our grandchildren. It's a natural love. It's not a justified love. It's there. As time goes on, little Tatala that went to kindergarten and drew that piece of art that was hanging on the refrigerator for a few years grew up. He got older. And he tells his parents, I met a girl. Now they're excited for him, but at the same time, they're questioning this business. But don't you love us? There's a big difference between the love that he now has for this girl than what he has for his parents. One doesn't negate the other, but it's different. Why? Isn't love love? That's not a natural love. Something is attracting him to that love. It may be the personality, it may be the looks, it may be the voice, it may be something, whatever it may be. Something is attracting him to her and her to him. That's very different than this natural inborn love that we have for our children and our children have for us. Why is it so passionate, so alive, so heated, and I'll add so difficult when we have such a relationship outside of our parents? She chose me. She looked at me and she fell in love with me. She's making a choice to love me. You, Papa and Mom, you didn't choose to love me. I didn't do anything to gain your love. I was born to you. But someone outside this family is choosing me. And that's special. That's why that love is a very different love. It's a more complex love. It's one thing when a mother tells her son, you're so handsome. You get used to hearing it so much and you stop believing it. It doesn't mean anything. But the first time a girl says to a guy, wow, you're good looking, it changes everything for him. But your mother said the same word to you this morning. It didn't mean a thing. It's very different. You have to say that. You're my mother. She could have chosen the quarterback on the high school football team, but she chose me. The children of Israel are first described as children, the children of Israel. We are born into the family. God loves us because we're Abraham's grandchildren. And he had this relationship with Abraham. We're his children. It's a natural love. Now we come to Sinai. Now it's a different relationship. Now, we don't look like the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob anymore. We got assimilated into Egypt. We became slaves there. And now we're brought out of that slavery and we're brought to Sinai. And God says, do you want to marry me? Do you want to have this relationship with me outside of the fact that you are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? But I'm going to put down, this is what I'm all about. These are my commandments. This is the Torah. These are the 10 commandments. These are the rituals. Are you in? Do you want to reestablish a relationship, but a different type of relationship? That's why at Sinai it's considered as if God married us. And we accepted. We said, Nasa v'nishma. We took the ring. We accepted. And I quote to you from Isaiah chapter 42, verse 1. This is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I have put my spirit upon him. He shall teach the true way to the nations. Or Isaiah chapter 49, verse 6. See if this sounds familiar to you. I will make you a light of nations, so that my salvation shall be until the end of the earth. Or Isaiah chapter 60. And nations shall go by your light, and kings by the brilliance of your shine. Or as we've been studying in Deuteronomy, for you are a holy people to God your God. God your God has chosen you to be for him a treasured people above all peoples that are on the face of the earth. Not because you are more numerous than all of the people did God desire you and choose you, For you are the fewest of all the peoples. Rather, because of God's love for you, and because he observes the oath that he swore to your forefathers, did he take you out with a strong hand and redeem you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. In these verses, we're called an Am Kadosh, a holy people. The words I use, Becha Bachar, in you I chose. We have the words Am Segula, a treasured people. May Ahavas Hashem, God's love for you. If you are a student of the Torah, if you're a student of the Bible, you can't deny that the Torah is saying that there's something about us being a chosen people. And that's why the blessing we make when we get called up to the Torah, Asher Bachar Banu Mikalo Amim, who chose you from all other nations, you can't escape it. The world won't allow us to escape it. That's God calling you. He's asking you, do you want to be a member of the chosen people? Don't put him on hold. Just I've always said, put the ringers on off. The exception, if you remember, I've made is if you have Hava Nagila that plays, we let you have it. But if it's just a boring ringtone, please just shut the ringer during class. It's okay, Elisa. Don't worry about it.
She's still chosen.
You're still part of us, yes. You know, the world never allowed us to forget, quote unquote, that we're the chosen people. They always chose us as well. They chose us for different reasons. Yeah. They expelled us. They persecuted us. But we never forgot who we are because they never let us forget who we are. And in the history of the world, there have been some good days and some not such good days for the Jewish people. I think we're in a glorious period of time right now. I think it's easier to be a Jew today than any time in the past few thousand years. Any of you, I don't know where you all come from. Just think for a moment about your Bubby and your Zaidi. Go back 2 generations. Was it as easy for them to be a practicing Jew as it is today? Think of it. Wherever they may have lived, Poland, Russia, Czechoslovakia, wherever it was struggle. But they did it. They lived through it. Go back 5 generations, go back 10 generations, go back 50, any period of time. There were always pockets of where things were good. Leaders for a period of time that were kind to the Jewish people in their community, in their midst, until that leader left and some other leader took over and it wasn't good. We lived in Spain for many years until they said, get out. There were a period of time, the golden days of which the Muslims were very good to us. And then they weren't. There are places today under Muslim control that are very good to the Jewish people. Morocco is an example. And hopefully it continues to spread with other Arab countries suddenly allow Jews to live there, allow Jews to prosper. It should be that way. But I don't believe there's ever been a period of time where the supermajority of Jews that are alive in this generation, anywhere in the world, have the freedoms that we have. Even when I was growing up, which not that long ago, we talked about Jews in the Soviet Union who weren't allowed to practice. The Soviet Union took up about a third of the entire world, right? It was massive. No Jew was allowed to practice, and if they did, they had to do it underground. They had to hide in cellars. If they got caught, they were sent to Siberia. Today, we have synagogues in Russia. We have day schools in Russia. We have mikvahs in Russia. We have kosher restaurants everywhere in the world. It's never been the freedom that we have. And we have Israel today. For thousands of years, we didn't have a free Israel. There's so much that we have today. And we owe the debt of gratitude to our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, all those of our ancestors that lived through the darkest times, and they held on to a mission. They held on to it, only so that they can pass it on to us. They dreamed of a day when we would have the freedoms that we have. They did the hard work. We're fortunate that for us, we have the easy time. So let's be proud of it. Let's be able to study what it means to be a chosen people and live it proudly, openly. and fulfill that which God says to Abraham, to bring blessings to all the families on the face of the earth. We're not here to put any other people down. We don't put any religion down. We don't put any faith down. As far as I know, and I'm not an expert on the world religions, but Judaism is the only religion in the world that doesn't monopolize heaven. It doesn't say we're the only ones that get in. If you're Jewish, you get in. If you're good, you get in. We don't look down upon other faiths. We don't say your faith is wrong, our faith is right. There's different pathways to godliness. This is the faith for the Jewish people. This, I know, is what God wants me to do. Now, if you study it, and you're outside of the Jewish people, and you study it, and you fall in love with it, and you want to be part of it, there's an open door as well. Because we don't discriminate. Anyone that wants to be part of it can be part of it.